What is up, gamers? I am finally back from Spain, and for my totally first not controversial video, well, we are gonna go back to the staple of the channel, which is more budget decks. It's been about 2 months since the last one. For this, there will be 13 decks we are covering today. Now, just like the last video, all of these will be available on 50 Cards' website where you can buy them directly. And he is also doing a big sale once again, so you can save a ton of money buying other things. And if you use discount code FLAIR, you can get a percentage discount off of everything. So since we have 13 decks to cover, we are gonna kind of speed run through all of them, not go super in depth, but just give a basic outline of what everything does. And yeah, enjoy the video. Please subscribe! So first up is Shojo Doji. The whole premise of Shojo Doji is having your stealth units be able to go into bind zone and be able to come back out of bind zone to multi-attack with, or also go to soul to fuel other costs. So our main grade 3 is able to bind rear guards from the opponent's circles. It doesn't target the rear guard itself, so you can hit, for example, Fasado and bind it still. And then also on attack, you can Counterblast 1, move 2 rear guards into soul, and call a stealth unit from your bind zone. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, that called unit gets plus 10k. So Shojo Doji is really good at being an aggro deck. So we utilize cards early on through our ride line. Grade 1 and grade 2 Shojo Doji fuel our soul, bind, and field in order to be able to push the opponent super hard. So the grade 1 puts 1 to bind and 1 into soul, and the grade 2 puts 1 to rear guard and 1 into soul. So because of all this free advantage we get, we are able to aggro the opponent super hard. Our main call targets off the grade 2 Shojo Doji are Haden Resu, which becomes a 19k beater whenever it's played by your Vanguard's ability. There's Jakumetsu Arcs, which is able to bot deck the opponent's bound cards. And there's also Unprecedented, which becomes a 23k beater and can also Soul Blast to draw a card whenever you call it off your grade 2. The whole goal of the deck is to be able to call out a bunch of units early on, rush the opponent, and then try to win by Persona Ride turn. If you want to see more in depth on how Shojo Doji looks, I made a video back in February going over a fully in-depth deck profile of it. Following up is Greon. So Greon is getting a mask form in the near future, so this is a good way to be able to prepare for that. So our main grade 3 is Greon. If you have a Greon in soul, then you lose at 7 damage instead of 6. And at the end of the battle that he attacks, you can Soul Blast 2, put 4 of your standing rear guards into soul, and restand Greon. And if you have 10 or more cards in soul, he gets plus 15k until the end of the turn. So we want to fully utilize Greon's ability to multi-attack as strong as possible. Our grade 2 in our ride line, we run 4 of it because we want to keep putting them into our soul. So if he's in your soul and you have 4 more damage, then your Greon and Vanguard gets plus 5k. So if you have 4 of them in your soul, your Greon will be base 33 before any other power additions. We also have Crimson Expeller, which can put itself in the drop from your soul and give your Vanguard plus 10k power for the turn. We also have Incane, which whenever it's put into soul from your Vanguard's ability, you can Counterblast 2 and give your Vanguard plus 5k and a drive for the turn. So see, these are some of the ways to make Greon stronger during each of his attacks. So we also want ways to call out rear guards to be able to fuel Greon's cost of putting rear guards into soul. We have Desire Devil Kennen, which calls from the top. We have Desire Devil Muka, which calls from your soul. So this is a very, very baseline list. We have Time Jarrett Dragon in order to be able to put things into our soul. So we can put a Greon in the soul if we're trying to lose at 7 instead of 6. We could put Bushoku to get more power to Greon during our turns. Crimson Expeller for more power. And Kuviski. So Kuviski, while it's in your soul and your rear guard is placed by a card ability and your Vanguard is Greon and you have 4 more damage, then the called unit gets plus 5k until end of turn. So if you have multiple of these in your soul, every time you call something from your soul, that thing gets multiple procs of power from Kuviski through Kennen and Muka. Next up is Hexa Orb. So Hexa Orb is getting a new form in set 10. And the deck becomes really strong from that. So the point of this list is for Hexa Orb to be able to stack its deck to hit multiple triggers in a turn. And then whenever you hit triggers, Hexa Orb gives power to more units. And then whenever you have your Persona Ride turn, then you're able to have triple drive and stack your deck with a trigger. Cards that help with this idea, we have Totone, which can bot deck opponent's units or stand a rear guard whenever you hit a trigger. We have Quadracast, which stacks your top 2 cards and also soul charges a card. We have Kakaron, which is a 12k beater, a 10k shield, and can also stack the top 2 cards of your deck. Olween, which can stack the top 2 cards of your deck and gets more power whenever you check triggers. We have Totris, which can search for your Persona ride. And we have Diaglass Sorceress, which can either stack your deck or call rear guards. So we utilize crits and fronts in here because we want Totone to be at full power. And if we hit a crit and a front, then Totone is able to do both of its effects. And we want to utilize our ability to stack the top cards of our deck to be able to hit more triggers more often and be able to beat down the opponent through sheer power of Hexa Orb. And that becomes super easy to upgrade once set 10 comes out because of the new Hexa Orb. Next up is Heroes. So the main idea is for Unite Dinos to be able to give your heroes extra power and be a really strong center column. And we utilize our base as a huge consistency tool for the deck. So whenever you play the base, check the top 7 cards of your deck and choose up to 3 hero cards and put one of them into your hand and then scout the other 2 into your base. So scouting is basically like the prison, but reversed. So you put the scouted cards into your base and then you can utilize the base's other skills to use the cards scouted in your base. So during your main phase, you can rest it and discard a card and then call a unit that's equal or less grade than your Vanguard. Or whenever your unit is attacked, you can Soul Blast 1 and rest the base and guard with one of the scouted cards. So there's a lot of flexibility with the deck because you are able to search and call more things from your deck, and you can also guard with the things you find. So our main heroes we are wanting to use, there's Rampart Speeder, which whenever you scout it, you soul charge 1. And if your Order Zone has a base and your Vanguard is a hero, he's a 15k shield. There's also Flattened Suffrey. Whenever it's placed on rearguard, you can cast 1 and retire the other front row rearguard in front of it. And during your turn, if your Order Zone has a base, it has plus 5k. And our way to multi-attack is with Direct Foriel. So at the end of the battle, your grade 3 Vanguard with hero and his card name attacked. And this is in your back row center rearguard. You can Soul Blast 1, rest it, and then swap 2 rearguards with the same column, in the same column as each other. And then the latest card from set 9 is Bold Sallows. So whenever it's discarded from your hand for the cost of your base, you can Counterblast 1 and call it, and then scout a hero from your drop zone. And then if you have 2 more bases, he has plus 10k power. So Bold Sallows really makes this deck come together because you're able to generate actual advantage during your turn when you use the base's effect, and gives you a reason to use it more than just for guarding. So overall, the deck is very budget friendly and is pretty solid for what it can do. We don't have any news of really new cards the deck can use just yet, but hopefully with set 11 or set 12, we can get a little bit more support for this archetype. Next is Zorga. So Zorga has proven itself to be the best mask deck coming out of set 10. So this will be a very great way for you to get ready to play Zorga if you're wanting to the mask deck in the future. So main grade 3 is Zorga, a red and blue Zorga, but the red one's pretty expensive and the blue one is used more often. So whenever you play a normal order, you can bind a normal order with a different name from your drop zone, and you can combine the effects to do Alchemy Magic. And then once per turn during your main phase, you can Counterblast 1 and revive something. So we want to utilize a bunch of different orders in order to create really cool combinations of cards and start generating advantage over the opponent that way. And the way we find these orders is with Shadow Cloak. So whenever you play Shadow Cloak from hand, you can discard an order that isn't already in your drop zone from your deck. So what are the orders we are using? There's Clouded Miasma, which is a revive and gives you front row plus 5k for the turn, just for a counterblast. There's Grief, Despair, and Rejection, where you can counterblast 1 and your front row gets, you give 3 units plus 10k. There's Gather Upon Me, Wandering Souls, where you discard an order and give your Zorga a drive. And then a couple other cards that can revive other things. So one of the big plays the deck can do is with Horu Mushroom. If you have ways to revive it early on, then you're able to use the mushroom and then be able to revive it later, and then be able to keep getting plant tokens to be able to aggro the opponent. Overall, Zorga is a great deck to invest in, and it will always basically be pretty good. It will never be a bad deck. Next, we are going to go into set 9 decks. So some of these are a bit more expensive than the ones we just talked about, but this will be a great way if you are interested in playing one of these decks to be able to get started in playing these decks themselves. First up is Vanguard Bruce, which is the new Bruce form. So at the beginning of your battle phase, if all of your units are Diabolos, then you are in Final Rush into until the end of your opponent's turn. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, then you're in Final Burst. And then on attack, if you're in Final Burst, you can Counterblast 1, stand a column, and give that column plus 5k. So we have to play a bunch of Diabolos cards in our deck in order to actually make our deck function properly. And we want to play cards that gain a bunch of power to be able to push the opponent super hard. So there's Megan, which while you're in Final Rush, every time it attacks, it gets plus 10k for turn. So after you restand it off Vanguard Bruce, it'll gain plus 20k from its own effect. And then there's Jared, which gives a unit plus 10k. And then whenever it attacks, the opponent can't intercept on its attack. There's also Stephanie, which if you're in Final Rush, all your other units in the same column as it has plus 5k. So a really cool play is you can put it behind Vanguard, and because you're in Final Rush until the end of the opponent's turn, Vanguard Bruce becomes an 18k body defensively, which is really good. And then the other strong card that came out with Vanguard Bruce is Jamil. So if you're in Final Burst, he becomes a 20k power, 10k shield unit. And whenever it's placed on rearguard, if your Vanguard's Vanguard Bruce, you Counterblast 1, Soul Charge 1, call a grade 3 or less normal unit with Diabolos from your soul, and call it to rearguard. All of our triggers, other than the over trigger, are Diabolos. So if you need to, you can also call them down as well. In set 10, this deck does get a new grade 2 that can force the opponent to guard with units on the field, which can be really annoying to deal with. Next up is Grandfaia. So Grandfaia is all about calling a bunch of tokens down and stacking them all into one big token called the Noblesse Rose. And then you retire those tokens in order to gain a bunch more power. So the Noblesse Rose token gets plus 5k for each token on it, and every time you call a token, you put it as a gauge on the Noblesse Rose token. And then Grandfaia, whenever at the end of the battle he attacks, you can retire up to 5 plant tokens and stand a rearguard, and for each token you retire, that rearguard gets plus 5k. But you have to retire 3 tokens in order to stand something. So this is a 4 attack deck that can also be really aggressive when it needs to be. And we are able to really put the pressure on the opponent early on through cards like Boru Mushroom, which puts itself in the soul and calls 2 plant tokens. There's Farm and Pumpkin, which calls more tokens. And then there's Orangerine, which calls more tokens. We also play a small package of revive cards through Rotting Usurp Dragon and the grade 1 Maple. So whenever you re-ride into Grandfaia, you're able to call out a new field and be able to keep the pressure going. We also have Bilber in here as a way to try to find our token generators a lot quicker. Next up is my favorite deck from set 9, which is Avant Garda. So Avant Garda is all about the strategy set orders, and you use Avant Garda's skill to put those set orders in the soul and gain bonus effects off of them. So Avant Garda himself, if you have the starter in your soul, in this deck you will never soul blast the starter. If you do, then your game ends. Then you can put one of your strategy orders from your field in the soul, draw a card, and get plus 5k for the turn. And he gets the skill that at the end of the battle, if he hit or if you Persona Road that turn, you can Counterblast 1, discard 1, and restand. So we have 3 different strategies in here. There's Kill Shroud, which whenever it's put in the soul, you retire something and give your Vanguard plus 5k. There's Dusting, which gives your Vanguard plus 10k and prevents your opponent from intercepting or using blitz orders for the whole turn. And then there's also Death Winds, where your Vanguard gets the skill that on attack, you give your front row plus 5k for the turn. So each one has different cases. Dusting is really good against decks that have strong interceptors like Ava. Death Winds is usually the one you go to during your Persona Ride turns because you will guarantee have 2 attacks and you're just going to gain a massive amount of power. And then Kill Shroud is a way to deal with really annoying rearguards early on. So for this build, we utilize Halton Vogel, which can search for your grade 3 set order and also is a base 18k beater whenever you play a set order for the turn. We use Enlightened Age Dragon. During your Persona Ride turns, you're able to grab your strategies from your drop zone and put them back into your hand. And it's a 15k beater itself. And then we have Mega Grago as an on-hit countercharger. And then our way to gain more multi-attack through Avant Garda is with Goldog Dragon. If you have a set order and you discard Goldog Dragon during your turn, you can Counterblast 1 and call it. So you're able to attack with the rearguard, then attack with Avant Garda, and then Avant Garda's skill will discard a card. And And if you discard Goldog Dragon, then you're able to call it out and have 5 attacks in your turn instead of the 4. And then the neat card in here is Taser Lage. So in your front row rearguard once per turn, if your opponent's rearguard is placed other than from hand, you can rest it. So this is good against decks that don't play hard removal, but also call cards from outside of their hand. Biggest example is Obscudade and Ava during the middle of the turn. So overall, Avant Garda is a pretty solid deck, and it gets a lot more support going into set 10 through Blue Hathaway. And there's potentially a promo that we don't have confirmed yet, but does make the deck pretty solid in itself. Last for the set 9 decks is Unica. So Unica is getting a mask form in set 10. So investing in it is pretty solid right now. So our main grade 3 is Estrella Unica. So every time you Soul Blast a trigger by Unica's other effect, then you can give a unit plus 5k for turn. And whenever it attacks, you Soul Blast 3 and you bind all of the critical triggers used for this cost. And you get the following effects depending on the amount of crits in your bind zone. So if there's 1 or more, you retire something. If there's 2 or more, she gains a crit. And if there's 3 or more, she gains a drop. So this deck is all about getting your crits into your soul and be able to bind them as fast as possible. And you keep utilizing your triggers to be able to gain more power during your turns. So ways we help that, there's the grade 2 in the ride line, Turret Dyna, which can put 2 trigger units from your drop zone in the soul and gain plus 5. There's Rolnick Cerberus, which does the same thing. There's Kit's Peak Griffin, which is a 15k attacker and 10k shield. And whenever you call it, then you can put 2 triggers from your drop into your soul. There's also Zorgon, which on hit lets you put 2 cards from your drop into your soul. So overall, Unica is able to consistently be able to pump power out and is a really solid Vanguard attacker in itself. For the last section of this video, it will be all of the original Lyrical decks. So because the next Lyrical set is around the corner, it is a really good idea to invest into a lot of these Lyrical stuff sooner rather than later. And this will just be an easy way to get a lot of these cards in your hands quicker. First up for the Lyrical decks is Willista. The main idea is you have your 2 gems, Ruby and Sapphire, and you're able to continuously put them into your soul and have Willista use bonus effects through them. So Sapphire gives a unit plus 5k for the turn, and Ruby lets you draw 2 cards and discard a card. And they both go in the soul after you use them. And then Willista, whenever you Soul Blast Ruby for its cost, you can give Willista plus 15k for the turn, and your opponent can't intercept for the turn. And if you Soul Blast the Sapphire, then you can check the top 5 and call 2 units to open rearguards, discard the others, and give the called units plus 5k. So we're able to speed this up with Otili, where whenever you use Ruby, then Otili gets plus 10k for the turn, and you can play an additional order that turn. And it's not once per turn, so you can keep activating this effect if you keep playing True-Hearted Ruby. And then our way of multi-attacking is through Ophelia. So at the end of the battle, your Willista Vanguard attacked. If you Soul Blasted a Ruby, then she gets plus 15k for the turn. If you Soul Blasted a Sapphire, then you can Counterblast 1, bot deck one of your back row rearguards, and stand it. So it is able to swing for really big as well. Next up is Celestial. Celestial plays with white and black wings as its mechanic. You have white wings active if you have an odd grade in your bind zone, and you have black wings active if it's an even. So main grade 3, if you have white wings active, she gains plus 5k and a crit. And if you have black wings active, all your opponent's units get minus 5k, both during your turn. So this deck is mostly played around white wings, but we do have access to both of them through Elkel. Whenever you bind it, both your white wings and black wings are both active until the end of your opponent's next turn. So we're able to fully utilize both sides of the wings in order to put pressure on the opponent. So on the black wing side, we have Aim for the Horizon PL, which if you have a Vanguard Celestial, its card name, it can attack a grade 3 or greater Vanguard from the back row. And since Celestial's black wings minuses the opponent's power by 5k, then this is able to hit over grade 3s. There's also a male, which it works kind of like Unica, where you're able to bounce your rearguards or cards in your soul back into your hand. And for a big win condition, it's our grade 1 Aaron Mule. So whenever it's placed on rearguard and your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can Counterblast 1, choose one of your rearguards for every 3 of your odd grade units, and give that rearguard plus 5k and a crit. So if you have a full board of grade 3s and 1s, then you can have a full front row of plus 5k and a crit. For Felty Rosa, The main idea is to use Felty Rosa as your main Vanguard, and to consistently be able to remove your front row rear guards, and then have Felty Rosa be able to recall ones off your drive checks, and you have a higher chance of hitting triggers in the long run. So we utilize in-grid as a way to remove itself. It can also restand and countercharge whenever you call it other than from hand. Annalise is able to remove itself by going in the soul and giving a rearguard plus 5k for turn. And Eleanor can Soul Blast 2 to become a 25k beater and go back on top of the deck. And as an additional way to extend, there's Hailwig, where whenever it's placed on rearguard during battle phase, you can put it in the soul and draw a card. So whenever you use this effect, you're able to use Felty Rosa's skill more often. And the last deck of the video is Lyrical. The main idea is to have these song orders be placed in your order zone, and whenever you sing those songs, you gain bonus effects. So Lyrical is able to sing a card for Counterblast 1 each turn, and then on attack, if you have 2 or more face down cards in your order zone, then you can sing another song and she gains Sentinel Restrict. The big combo with this is with 6 Flower Fractal. So whenever it's sung, you choose the same number of your rearguards as the number of face down cards in your order zone and stand them. And then for each one stirred, your Vanguard gets plus 10k. So very easily, Lyrical is able to get to 50k plus power and is able to multi-attack 4 or 5 times. Your other orders are able to draw you cards and give your Vanguard crit as well. And that is all of them. Again, if you want any of these decks, or you potentially have extra money to upgrade them even further, 50 Cards has all of these decks on his website, and he's also doing a big sale, so you're able to get a bunch of different stuff you're really wanting. And that is it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you guys in the next one.